Welcome to the deep dive. We are so thrilled to have you joining us today.
Yeah, really glad you're here with us.
And you know exactly who you are. You're someone who actively hunts for those paradigm shifting realizations.
The aha moments.
Exactly. You look for the hidden connective tissue between, I guess, seemingly totally unrelated concepts. You like looking at the world through a slightly unconventional lens.
Right. And you probably have zero patience for that surface level information that doesn't actually, teach you anything new.
Oh, absolutely zero patience. So you are in the exact right place today because we are embarking on just a phenomenal exploration.
We really are. We're going to be unpacking a phenomenon that manages to be deeply intimate, but also entirely universal at the exact same time.
Which is a rare combo.
It is. We're examining the architecture of human fascination, specifically through the framework of these excerpts we're looking at today from The Primal Pull of Deep Waters and Distant Stars.
Man, that phrase alone, the
So
primal pull, it just carries so much weight.
it really sets the tone for what we're looking at.
It does.
Yeah.
And our mission for this deep dive is to deconstruct exactly why the human mind is so magnetically, almost overwhelmingly drawn to two massive, radically different environments, the ocean and the cosmos.
Right, the deep waters and the distant stars.
Yeah. And on the surface, you might brush this off as just a mere aesthetic preference.
Like, oh, you just like the beach.
Right. Like, we all know people who feel an intense need to live near the coast, just like we know people who will drive for hours into the middle of the desert just to look through a telescope.
Out away from the city lights, yeah.
Exactly. But we are setting the stage today to demonstrate that this isn't just some poetic quirk of human nature. There is a profound layer of evolutionary biology and cognitive psychology driving these behaviors.
And that's the key. Our objective here is to move beyond the simple acknowledgement of what we feel when we look at these unfathomably large spaces.
We want to know why.
Exactly. We want to investigate the why. We're looking at the underlying cognitive machinery of human curiosity. Why is the human neurological system calibrated to react so powerfully to environments that are, objectively speaking, entirely hostile to our biology?
Right. Because they are hostile.
Oh, completely. Without highly specialized artificial life support systems?
Like submarines or spacesuits?
Yeah, exactly. Without those, both the deep ocean and the vacuum of space would extinguish human life in a matter of minutes.
Seconds, even.
Right. Yet we just cannot look away from them.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the foundation of this entire concept rests on a sharp, almost startling contrast between the ocean and the stars.
It's a fascinating dichotomy.
It really is. Let's start with the ocean. When we look at the marine environment, we are looking at an embodiment of depth, profound mystery, and our literal biological origins.
The starting line.
Yes, the starting line. And I want to linger on that concept of origin for a second because I think it's really easy to take for granted.
Oh, for sure. We hear it in school and just accept it.
Right. We possess this baseline knowledge that organic life on Earth initiated in the primordial oceans, billions of years ago.
But when you truly contextualize that,
It is a staggering reality. Think about it. You stand on the shoreline looking out at the very biochemical cradle that birthed your earliest ancestors, and yet
it remains a near total enigma.
a total enigma. I mean, we have mapped the surface of Mars with greater resolution than we have mapped the abyssal plains of our own planet.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It's insane. It's this massive, dense reservoir of secrets covering 70% of the globe we actually live on.
And what's fascinating here is that paradox of the ocean is central to understanding its psychological weight.
How so?
Well, it's our genesis point, right?
Right.
But it operates as an alien world literally right beneath our feet.
Right.
The sheer volumetric scale of the unexplored pelagic zones anchors this psychological concept of depth.
Oh, I like that, the concept of depth.
Yet when an individual looks out at the open water, they are not merely observing a geographic feature. They're looking into a temporal abyss.
They're looking back in time.
Exactly. They're staring down into an evolutionary history that they belong to, but are biologically locked out of accessing. It's a space saturated with biological data and historical context that we've barely even begun to decipher.
So that's the ocean. Then we have the secondary environment, outer space.
The stars.
The stars. If the ocean represents the depth of our origins and the buried secrets of our past, the cosmos represents pure expansion, Infinite possibility, the ultimate unknown.
It's a forward trajectory.
Exactly. For thousands of years, humans have stood on this rock, looking upward, projecting human imagination into the void. I mean, millennia before the invention of the first optical telescope.
Long before we had the mathematical frameworks to understand orbital mechanics.
Or galactic superclusters, yeah. We were mapping constellations. We were hardwiring the night sky into our mythologies, our navigation systems, our agricultural calendars.
We were drawn to that endless dark expansion before we even knew what it actually was.
What's fascinating here is the absolute duality of these vectors. We are dealing with two opposing gravitational forces acting on the human psyche.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
The ocean exerts a backward pull. It draws our psychological focus downward into our biological foundation. It returns us to the literal starting point of terrestrial life.
In space, conversely, exerts a forward pull.
Right.
It draws the mind upward and outward into the conceptual realm of endless possibility. We exist suspended between these two monumental environments.
Suspended in the middle.
Exactly. One serves as the ultimate historical anchor, reminding us of what we emerged from, while the other serves as the ultimate infinite horizon, demanding we consider what we might eventually become.
That spatial and temporal framing perfectly sets up the emotional divergence we experience, because our cognitive response to these environments isn't purely analytical, right?
No, not at all. It's deeply viscerally emotional.
And those emotional states are entirely distinct from one another. Think about standing at the edge of the ocean. It typically induces a state of profound calm, introspection, grounded connection.
You can visualize the sensory input,
Yeah, the rhythmic acoustic frequency of waves breaking on the shore,
a tactile sensation of the wind.
the heavy, immovable presence of the horizon line. It all creates this deeply reflective, stabilizing emotional resonance.
And that stabilizing effect aligns perfectly with the psychological concept of the ocean as an anchor. The rhythmic nature of the tide mirrors our own autonomic biological rhythms.
Like our heartbeat.
Exactly, our heartbeat, our respiration. The sensory environment of the coast invites a deceleration of the nervous system.
It slows us down.
It does. It triggers an inward-looking cognitive state where the individual feels a somatic connection to the physical earth. It's a deeply grounding phenomenon.
But then contrast that physical grounding with the experience of observing the night sky.
Completely different feeling.
Completely different. Looking up into a clear, light pollution-free sky full of stars does not necessarily induce that same heavy, rhythmic calm.
No, it triggers a spark.
A spark, yes. The emotional profile shifts entirely toward awe, intense curiosity, and a sudden, sharp sense of wonder. Instead of pulling your attention inward toward reflection, the celestial sphere rips your attention outward.
And that outward shift is where we encounter a critical piece of cognitive architecture. Neuroscientists and psychologists classify this specific reaction as the awe response.
The awe response.
Right. It's a highly specific, measurable psychological state that functions almost like a cognitive circuit breaker.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of that circuit breaker.
Yeah.
What exactly is the awe response doing to our processing systems?
Well, when the human brain is confronted with stimuli of an unfathomable scale, whether that's the endless crushing volume of the Pacific Ocean or the visible arm of the Milky Way galaxy, it encounters a processing error.
A processing error.
Yeah. The scale of the information simply exceeds the brain's default everyday predictive frameworks. You cannot categorize the cosmos using the same neural pathways you use to categorize your daily routine.
That makes total sense.
So to manage this massive influx of scale, the brain effectively shifts gears. It suspends its focus on immediate micro-level concerns and forces the cognitive lens to widen, allowing the individual to contemplate existence on a macro scale.
To bring this directly to you, the listener think about the cognitive load you carry on a standard Tuesday.
Oh, it's exhausting.
It is. Your mental bandwidth is likely entirely consumed by microfrictions. You're navigating complex professional dynamics, managing strategic deadlines.
Optimizing your financial planning.
Right. Coordinating the logistics of your personal life. Within the standard operating state of your brain, those microfrictions are the entire universe.
They feel monumental.
Monumental. But then, place yourself on a dark ridgeline looking up at a meteor shower, or standing on a cliffside watching a massive squall rolling over the Atlantic. In those highly specific moments, the awe response activates, and those high-stress microfrictions undergo an immediate, radical miniaturization.
The reduction of the ego is a hallmark of the awe response. It induces a state of deeply liberating humility.
Liberating humility. I love that phrasing.
Yeah, when the cognitive aperture widens, to take in the macro reality of a galaxy or an ocean. The urgency of a missed email or a delayed flight loses its psychological grip.
It just evaporates.
It does. The individual experience is a profound, temporary restructuring of their priorities. Your own psychology grants you a momentary reprieve from the claustrophobia of modern, hyper-connected life.
Which we all desperately need.
We really do. It allows you to participate merely as an observer in the grand architecture of the universe.
Liberating humility is the perfect term for it. There is an undeniable sense of relief in letting the ego dissolve for a few minutes.
Oh, sure.
But there is a fascinating paradox woven into that liberating humility. You would assume that feeling infinitesimally small in the face of the universe would render a species docile.
Right, you'd think it would make us hide.
Exactly. It should make us want to retreat to a safe, controllable environment. But here's where it gets really interesting. This profound sense of awe does not paralyze us.
Not at all.
It acts as an incredibly potent catalyst. This specific brand of human curiosity sparked by massive hostile environments is the primary engine of our most audacious actions.
The awe response is not merely a mechanism for passive observation. It's a driver of extreme risk tolerance and behavioral propulsion.
Behavioral propulsion, let's dig into that.
Well, the historical record demonstrates that this exact curiosity is what pushed early hominids to leave the African continent. It pushed Polynesian wayfinders to navigate the vast, featureless Pacific in outrigger canoes.
Which is still mind-blowing.
It's incredible, and it eventually pushed modern humans to strap themselves to controlled chemical explosions just to walk on the lunar surface.
The audacity of that progression is just difficult to overstate. Picture an early human standing on the shoreline looking at the ocean.
It's terrifying.
It's an unpredictable, volatile, terrifying body of water that offers no visible food source on its surface and promises almost certain death if you venture too far.
Right.
The logical, survival-oriented response is to turn around and walk back into the forest.
Stay where it's safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead, the human response was to fell a tree, hollow it out, and push into the current just to see what was on the other side.
To see what's out there.
Fast forward a few millennia, and we look up at the dead vacuum of space and decide to engineer a thermodynamic miracle just to touch it.
From crossing the Pacific to building the Apollo rockets.
The behavior is fueled by the exact same primal pull.
Which forces us to analyze the underlying utility of this behavior. Because crossing uncharted oceans and launching biological organisms into a zero-gravity vacuum are incredibly dangerous, resource-intensive activities.
Highly illogical from a pure survival standpoint.
Exactly. If we view human behavior strictly through the lens of self-preservation, staying within a known, mapped biome is the optimal strategy.
Don't rock the boat.
Right. So we have to examine the theoretical frameworks that attempt to explain why humans are uniquely burdened or gifted with a curiosity that consistently overrides our baseline survival instincts.
There are two primary theoretical camps from the text that attempt to explain this drive. Let's look at the first one, which is deeply rooted in evolutionary biology.
Okay.
This perspective argues that the drive to explore the unknown is a hardwired adaptive trait.
The biological argument posits that curiosity is a mechanism for long-term species viability.
Okay, unpack that for us.
While the act of exploring a new hostile environment carries a massive mortality risk for the individual explorer, the potential payoff for the broader species is astronomical.
So the biological imperative sacrifices the individual for the resource expansion of the group.
Effectively, yes. A population that possesses a genetic predisposition for extreme curiosity will constantly push the boundaries of its known territory.
Always looking over the next hill.
Right. In doing so, they locate untapped food sources, discover novel materials, and identify strategic geographic positions.
They build a buffer against localized ecological collapse.
Exactly. Furthermore, the sheer friction of surviving in a new, alien biome forces rapid technological and behavioral adaptation.
We get smarter because we have to.
Yes. The species becomes more resilient, more intelligent, and more versatile. From a purely Darwinian perspective, staring at the ocean or the stars and feeling an overwhelming compulsion to go there is simply a complex survival algorithm executing its code.
Wow.
We explore because the descendants of the non-explorers eventually ran out of resources and died off.
That biological reductionism is highly logical. It frames our greatest achievements as complex foraging behaviors.
Which is a bit humbling.
It is, but that angle can feel a bit incomplete when you consider the sheer philosophical poetry of human endeavor. We don't just go to space to find minerals, we
Right.
go to answer questions. And that brings us to the second theoretical framework, which moves away from genetics and looks at existential philosophy.
The second framework interprets this drive as existential curiosity.
Existential curiosity.
This theory suggests that the human operating system requires more than just caloric intake and physical safety to function optimally. It requires a structural understanding of meaning.
Existential scaffolding. The idea that we need to know where the boundaries are in order to understand what is contained inside?
Exactly that. Existential curiosity is the drive to establish context. When we build deep-sea submersibles to map the Mariana Trench, or launch the James Webb Space Telescope to capture infrared light from the dawn of the universe, we are not looking for arable land.
No.
We are looking for our own reflection. We are attempting to determine our exact coordinate in the grand hierarchy of existence.
It shifts the question from what resources are out there to what does the existence of out there say about us in here?
It is the human mind attempting to contextualize its own consciousness. The ocean and the cosmos represent the ultimate other, the vast non-human reality.
Right.
By dedicating enormous amounts of cognitive and physical energy to studying these spaces, we are indirectly trying to define the parameters of humanity.
To see where we fit.
Yeah, if the universe is an infinitely complex puzzle, existential curiosity is the desperate need to examine the shape of our specific puzzle piece and figure out how it locks into the surrounding darkness. This raises an important question, and it's one we want you, the listener, to actively consider.
I love this part.
The next time you feel that magnetic pull when you are standing on a beach, staring at the horizon, or looking up at a dense field of stars, what mechanism do you believe is actually driving your attention?
Yeah. Ask yourself.
Are you experiencing a biological echo, an ancient survival algorithm urging you to expand your territory and secure resources for your genetic lineage? Or are you experiencing a profound psychological yearning to locate your place in the universe, a need for existential context?
That's a heavy question.
Are we a species driven into the unknown by the mechanics of adaptation or by the weight of meaning?
Framing it as a binary choice might even be a trap, honestly, because they likely feed into each other.
Very true.
But it's a brilliant lens through which to view human history. Regardless of which camp you lean toward, the evolutionary imperative or the existential quest, the functional outcome on the human mind remains remarkably consistent.
The specific origin of the drive is almost secondary to the psychological utility of the experience itself.
Right.
The mechanics of the all response deliver the same vital cognitive recalibration either way.
So what does this all mean? We have navigated the dense historical depths of our ocean origins, and we have projected outward into the infinite expansion of the cosmos.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. We have examined how the all response acts as a cognitive circuit breaker, shrinking our macro frictions and forcing a structural reset of our priorities. We've traced how that very same humility paradoxically fuels the audacity to cross oceans and break the atmosphere, whether driven by a biological need to survive or an existential need to understand.
Right.
When you distill all of these concepts down to their absolute essence, the core takeaway is about the necessity of perspective.
It is about the fundamental act of remembering. Encountering these vast, non-human environments forces a powerful shift in perspective that we desperately need to maintain psychological equilibrium.
Without that interaction, our daily concerns artificially inflate to fill our entire field of vision.
The mind just closes in on itself.
Remembering that we are part of something unimaginably larger than ourselves is a psychological requirement. In our day-to-day existence, we are heavily siloed. We operate inside these constructed bubbles of routine and social expectation.
And it's incredibly easy to convince ourselves that our immediate problems are the center of reality.
Oh, it happens all the time. But standing in front of the primal pull of the deep waters or the distant stars shatters that illusion.
It's a necessary recalibration.
It really is. It reminds you that your personal narrative is just a microscopic, fleeting spark within an ancient, endlessly expanding system.
It prevents the human psyche from being entirely consumed by the mundane. We require the presence of the ocean and the stars to trigger that all response, to keep us grounded in the actual scale of reality.
It's a vital psychological nutrient.
It fundamentally changes the context of a simple walk on the beach or a glance out the window at night.
You aren't just taking in a pleasant view, you are engaging in a primal, ancient cognitive practice.
You're manually shifting your perspective.
You are participating in the exact same awe response that pushed our ancestors to navigate by the stars and build rockets to reach them.
It is a profound inheritance.
Mm.
But examining this through the lens of human progression leaves me with a final, highly complex thought.
Okay, let's hear it.
Something for you, our listener, to analyze as you go forward. We have established that the human awe response and the massive engine of curiosity it fuels is triggered specifically by the unknown elements of these vast environments.
The mystery of it.
Right. It's the unexplored abyss and the unreached galaxies that pull us forward. But what happens to the human cognitive architecture if we reach a point where the map is finished?
The end of the frontier.
Yeah. If human curiosity is intrinsically linked to encountering massive, uncharted domains, what is the psychological fallout of total illumination?
That is a terrifying thought.
If a day comes when the oceans are entirely mapped and the accessible cosmos is fully charted, do we lose our capacity to trigger the awe response?
Does that evolutionary engine of curiosity simply power down, leaving us stagnant?
Or will the human mind, deprived of external frontiers, be forced to invert its curiosity, hunting for the awe response in entirely new dimensions, perhaps turning completely inward into the architecture of consciousness itself?
What happens when the map is finished and we run out there? That is a staggering concept to sit with. Well, on that highly provocative note, we are going to conclude today's analysis.
It's been a great discussion.
It really has. We want to extend a massive thank you to you for joining us on this deep dive. Your appetite for these complex, interconnected concepts is the exact reason we do this work.
We hope you're walking away with a shifted perspective and a few new frameworks to apply to your world.
Keep studying the ocean, keep observing the stars, and keep questioning your place within the grand architecture of it all. We will see you next time.